Hello, dear RIGA International Film audience. I'm very happy to meet you here, and I'm more happy to have a talk today with the one and only Guy Maddin, who is here with me. Hi, Guy.
Hey there, how you doing?
Good. How's life on your side across the ocean?
Yes, here I am in my palatial apartment in Winnipeg, Canada. My bedroom, to be specific. It just seemed to have the best light. All the other lights make my face look like fluorescent orange and things like that. And my face is already, I got a bad sunburn recently. So you get the bedroom, you get the inner sanctum of my directorial musings. And with a dog on the bed. There it is. She's sleeping. Anyway, it's great. But I'm happy to make this connection across the Atlantic and, to the birthplace of Eisenstein, and to speak to you finally, and to speak to you about Rossellini things.
Yeah, finally. But just to give additional context from where I'm speaking, I'm currently in my apartment, so I have this small kind of studio set for the festival to do interviews and to finally meet you. But I think we can start to have the talk on your wonderful short film, My Dad.
Sure. Although you've made me envious, I want a studio set in my apartment.
This is only like a temporary one, so I have to say farewell in a few days to these huge boxes. So maybe. We can start with My Dad is 100 years old, which is obviously here at the festival. I found actually quite fascinating, also stepping outside this film, but entirety of your body of work, the aesthetics. But particularly in this film, we have this composition of film history, several characters, and Isabella's memories. And there, of course, is this distinctive melodramatic style. And this film is almost anything else that is our general conception of idea of a Rossellini film or neorealism. Yeah. Maybe you can talk about the aesthetics and how you approach this very unusual setting.
Sure. Well, the film idea was Isabella's all along. She wanted to make some sort of tribute to her father on the centennial of his birth, which was in 1906. So she approached me. It must have been shortly after we finished making The Saddest Music in the World, our first film together in 2003. And she said, my dad's centennial's coming up. I'd really love you to make a tribute to Roberto Rossellini with me. And I thought, oh my God, Roberto Rossellini is a titanic legend of neorealism, and I'm not. and I just felt that, I don't want to blow this. I don't want to take the job and then just make a mess of it, because I don't know anything, I don't know how to shoot neorealism. And I don't want to have to wait another 100 years for his bicentennial to get another shot at it. And so she reassured me after I told her these concerns that I felt I was exactly the wrong style of person to make a film to commemorate Roberto Rossellini. And she said that while watching me for the 20 days of shooting The Saddest Music in the World, she had been reminded over and over and over again by me of her father, not just my belly, which she speaks of in the film as being the beloved belly of her father, because I had one at the time. I have an even bigger one now. But she said she really just liked his attitude. She liked my attitude of can do. Just if I need a shot, just get it. And don't use professional actors. She cited as an example that really encouraged me about how her father would hire non-actors who didn't even know when to speak. So he would tie string to their toes. And when it was their turn to speak a line, just pull the string, their toe would feel it. They would say their line. Like, this was something I wished I'd thought of. Would have saved me a lot of film earlier in my career, tying string to toes. So there was a kind of a black and white, just locations or sets or non-actors, just the spirit. It just happens that Rossellini is a genius and created and was making his films at a particular intersection of historical movements and responded to those powers in exactly the right way, with a great, by fathering neorealism. And that I've been kind of making my own small path in cinema, but she just saw similarities enough to say, I'm the one to do it. Besides, she wasn't asking me to make a neorealist film. She was asking me to make a daughter's tribute to her father. So, and she's a really great writer. She's written a few books, and will probably continue to write more. She's an excellent comedian, and she really loved her father a lot. And we had a lot in common. We just hit it off right away when we started working together. And we found out that temperamentally we have much in common. Maybe it's, I'm an Icelandic Canadian. The name Maddin is Irish, but on my mother's side, I'm Icelandic. And she's, of course, Swedish on her mother's side. So there's something in that Scandinavian temperament that's a little bit ghoulish and dark. And she and I are that way. Anyway, I loved her writing. I loved her approach to filmmaking. And I know my answer is getting way too long now. And I've forgotten the question even. So that's a real indication that the answer is
it was more like a first entry question of how this whole kind of combination happened. And
right.
But yeah, but I was curious to know when you emphasized Isabella's writing talent. I'm very curious to know about those kind of patriarchs of cinema that are appearing in the film, and they have very lively reflection about Roberto's or Belly Roberto's films. So it was something that you both came up with, or how this kind of combination of people with Selznick, Hitchcock, Chaplin came in?
Right. The writing is 100% Isabella's. I flew to New York to help collaborate with her on the script, but I found myself hardly able to keep up with her ideas because she was writing about something so personal to herself, how she felt about her father. It is a documentary. It's very accurate. Isabella has a twin sister named Ingrid, and they're very close, but they fight a lot. They've just been that kind of pair of twins that they'll still argue over who got a better birthday present in 1959 and things like that. Anyway, when the film came out, Ingrid, Isabella's sister, claimed the film was full of lies. And we had funded it with money from a TV network up in Canada called the Documentary Channel. And that channel was satisfied that it was a documentary. But it isn't full of lies. It's full of very honest accounts of Isabella's feelings towards her father. And Ingrid had a different set of facts about her feelings about her father. So Ingrid could make an equally honest film about her father, and it would be radically different than this one. So to answer your question, in Isabella's memory, Chaplin was very important to Roberto Rossellini. Selznick, of course, represents Hollywood and worked with Ingrid and drew her back to Hollywood and worked with her before she went away and, eloped with this married man. And she didn't really elope. She just ran away to have a family with this married man in Italy. And of course, Fellini is there as a kind of opposite, an equally Italian, but forcefully opposite man aesthetically to Rossellini. And it could have just as easily been De Sica because the Rossellinis were very close with the De Sicas, and I think Isabella dated Vittorio De Sica's son at one point in high school. And I don't know, there's just so much stuff that was personal there. And she just started hauling it in to help her illustrate an argument about what she felt was important to her father as a filmmaker. So she used these characters and her own comedic powers to portray them. And I think she asked me to portray Roberto Rossellini's belly at one point, and man, I was tempted because it would be great to be listed in the Internet Movie Database as having played Roberto Rossellini or his belly. But I really wanted to lose a few pounds around that time, not gain a few more. And so I declined, and we got a really big belly, the belly of a, like a 300-kilogram man, to play the part. But otherwise it's all Isabella playing these. And it's so apt because these are memories of Chaplin, Fellini, Selznick, that they be filtered through the medium of Isabella and be played by her, that they speak in her voice, even like a seance's medium.
Mm. I agree. But I was also wondering how Isabella was open towards your sense of style of directing, or having this very over-the-top, archaic spectacle in a good way.
Yeah, like I say, it was her idea to, she approached me, and I was, when I accepted, because I just really wanted to work with her some more. So I accepted and decided, no matter how challenging this is, I'll take the job. But she didn't really want me to challenge myself too much, just shoot the script the way Guy Maddin would. And then she would sort of represent, I guess, the halfway point between Guy Maddin and Roberto Rossellini, because she is no neorealist herself, but she's very honest. Her film work and her writing, her journal, as a matter of fact, I think it's called All of Me in English. It's a really good book. She was hired to, she was contracted by a publisher to release her autobiography, her memoir. And so she started writing, and they were going to hire a ghostwriter to, do a proper professional job of writing. But the publisher soon realized that she has a very strong writer's voice. And so the ghostwriter was fired, and she just, in her own words, wrote this memoir. And she's since written other things. And she just has, what I love about her writing voice is it can be funny, it can be semi-pornographic, very, and it's always honest, and it can be really poignant. And so, and it's very nostalgic as well. She's never too far from thinking about the past, but she's always thinking about the feelings she has now. And like I say, it's funny, and it's so many things. It can be brutal and sexy, and just like her, she can be brutal and sexy and hilarious and raunchy. And so she's a mixed bag of things. My favorite artists are too many things to describe, and she's one of them.
It's wonderful, actually, that after many collaborations that you have had, that you can say about her such words. It's really
absolutely. Yeah, no, she impresses me more and more. I think since we met each other, I think she's gone on to, I don't even think she finished high school, but now she has her master's in biology. So she's just obsessed about things because she likes making these biology or insect-based sex films, and she does I don't know if her tour goes to Europe. I think it does. She does these talking tours that are sort of comedically educational and about dogs and other animals. And she's a real animal lover, and she lives on a farm with an increasing population of animals she loves. And yeah, she jumps out of bed in the morning. She's not depressed. She's someone determined to do a lot of things. That's impressive. I wish I could. I can't even. I'm still in my bed now, as a matter of fact.
But stepping a little bit away from Isabella, I wanted to know your personal opinion of why there is such a global audience to not only Roberto Rossellini's films still today,
Yeah.
but also there is this interest in the family itself or the brand of the family. And what
Yeah.
for you today they represent?
Well, they've always been legendary for so many reasons. You know, first of all, Roberto, the father of Italian neorealism, and a type and a way of making movies that survives to this day, an attitude that people still think back to when they're deciding how to approach their own first film project, say, or their 20th film project. And then Ingrid Bergman, one of the great, and she really is great. I still dive into a new Ingrid Bergman experience once or twice a year, a film of hers I haven't seen. And back in that studio system of Hollywood, there's no one better, really. You know, there's people as good, maybe Joan Crawford and Betty Davis and Barbara Stanwyck or something, but Ingrid Bergman just has her own look, and she's a really great actress. And then, of course, Isabella is equally legendary for her modeling career and for her activism on behalf of older models. You know, when Lancôme let her go at age 40, she kicked up a really big fuss because she just felt it was ridiculous that you should be thrown on the scrap heap at age 40. And so she didn't go down quietly. And now, maybe partially because of baby boomers getting older and older, but there are all sorts of models of all sorts of ages. And I think she really helped open eyes there. So, so she isn't just a model, but a model that, you know, made a difference. And then, of course, her work in David Lynch's Blue Velvet, a movie that launched a million violent, surrealist, dreamlike, honest, and bogus films, is pretty legendary as well. And then there's just everything secondary to that, and all the legends and attached to the children, this strain of Robertos that come vertically shooting down the family tree. Isabella has a son named Roberto, who's modeling now. Her daughter Elettra has been a model. They're really smart people too. I think Elettra went to the London School of Economics. I don't know. They're just really well accomplished. They're people that know what they want to do, and they're good people. So I don't know. Their brand. They're staying on brand even while they're being ferociously themselves now. So it's interesting.
It's interesting also to hear what kind of aspects you're emphasizing, because here in Latvia we have completely different perspective. There is only, I would say, this kind of interest in cinema, if there is actually. Those are those generations that have grew up with films with Ingrid Bergman, or films that are made by Roberto Rossellini, or there's small glimpses of Isabella's appearance, and then there is the rest. There is this, unfortunately, tabloid press.
Right.
Yeah, this aspect.
I'd kill to get into the tabloids myself. I can't see, no matter what I do, I can't seem to get into them. So I wouldn't say unfortunately. It's always good.
I don't think this is not something that you have to be sad about it, but yeah, speaking about your filmography, this is of course debatable, but I would claim that one of your most personal films are My Winnipeg.
Yes.
But do you think now, looking back, it's like 15, 16 years since you made My Dad is 100 Years Old, whether this is a personal film about cinema for you?
You know, it's very tempting to see that, to say that, but I think that film was just very personal for Isabella, And I was just sort of hanging on for dear life not to blow the film. But we do have sympathetic temperaments, and she knew that the film needed a director who loved all of film history, and so she got that in me. But what she taught me, we made that film in 2005, the year before the centennial of her father. She taught me that it's a documentary if you're just documenting your feelings. And that may seem a no-brainer now, because there's documentaries of all that come at their subjects from all points of the compass nowadays. But even in 2005, it was still considered kind of not a documentary if you were using elements of fantasy or imagination in your documentary. It was considered way less of a documentary. And there's really, but so her approach, which was full of honest accounts, sometimes, and in her book, she has more heartbreaking accounts of her father because she saw him so little when she was a little girl, maybe just for dinner once a week on Sundays. But she considered herself daddy's little girl, and I don't know how often she got to snuggle into his belly, but probably not often enough. Anyway, she showed me by writing her script without even stopping, without hesitating, without worrying about whether it was a documentary or not in the traditional sense. She showed me that you can be honest about your feelings, and your feelings are the subject of the documentary. So that's what I did for 2006. I shot My Winnipeg in 2006. It came out the year later. But that's exactly the same approach I used towards my city, Winnipeg. The same network, the documentary channel, commissioned it, as commissioned My Dad is 100 Years Old. The same guy said, go ahead and make this profile of Winnipeg. And I told him it was going to be a mixture of facts and feelings. And he said, go ahead. So yes, it is really personal. And while walking the dog, different dog, I just find walking the best mode of transportation if you want to generate really personal memories and feelings. You just, if you bump into something, you won't be killed, but if you're driving or riding a bike, you will be. So just moving around on foot, I find casts my thoughts backwards and in all directions around me, and just walking the streets of Winnipeg with my dog, and always keeping in mind the fun it was to make this film with Isabella. I ended up with an approach for My Winnipeg. And yes, so that's probably the most time I ever spent thinking of a script, thinking of my place in geography and my place in time, my place in the middle of my life trajectory even. And so it ended up being anchored often with very sweet memories, painful ones, uncomfortable ones, and reinforced from every possible direction. So yeah, it's by far my most personal film. So thanks for noticing.
Mm. But I was also curious to ask, I'm not making any kind of comparison, but wanted to know your take when in My Dad is 100 Years Old, Roberto, or the ballet Roberto, he's been named as the moralist of cinema.
Yeah.
But how you perceive your own style or your attitude or your body of work as moralist?
You know, I don't think of myself as a moralist one way or the other. I'm not even sure I know what it means, but I know that that was important to Roberto, and Isabella remembered that as being important to Roberto, or the father that she remembers felt that was important. I have other concerns when I'm making, I guess I always want to, maybe it is the same thing. I just don't use the word moralist ever when I'm trying to figure out what it is I'm doing. I usually work just sort of subconsciously towards a goal when I'm writing a script or making a film. I have some rules for myself, like, never to take myself too seriously. If I'm if I've been too serious for too long on the screen, I try to deflate that seriousness, undercut it somehow. I try to always be emotionally honest, if not factually honest, in my films. And I guess I'm always trying to get at feelings that I've experienced or that I continue to experience in spite of how long I've had them. And so I guess I'm always trying to figure out ways to make fairy tales, and I want them to be honest about the emotions the creator of these movies, feel. So I don't know if that has anything to do with moralism, but there's an honesty of emotion that I really try to honor all the time. Now, you of course can subconsciously lie to yourself and end up being dishonest to the viewer, but I present the truth as I feel it, as well as I possibly can. And whenever I think of my old movies, I haven't busted myself yet for any dishonesty. I've either continued to fool myself over the decades, or I really have been honest all these times in my, but so it's a long-winded way of saying I don't know about this moralist business.
Yeah, it is difficult to define what it actually is in cinema. But as for Roberto, I would say that this is some kind of very clear understanding how the world should function, actually.
Yeah.
And there is this kind of contrast that the reality offers something very different. And here we're trying to use as much as authenticity it's possible just to reach this kind of quality.
Yeah, I know for a fact he didn't like it when the camera or the film itself manipulated viewers too much, or so he said. So that's why my dad is 100 years old. The camera position is called out for being too fancy, too manipulative. And he didn't like extreme close-ups or I don't know, any obscure angles. He just liked a camera that framed the facts, So, and there's some real beauty in that. And I've never been accused of being an amazing cinematographer, and I tend to just put things in the middle of the frame myself. But that's just out of fear that if I put something important off to one side of the frame, no one will notice it. So maybe that's another thing Isabella noticed that I have in common with her father. I tend to just frame up the images and stick them in the middle. So I think Roberto would have considered that moral, whereas I just considered it a practical way of getting the information across. So maybe I'm incurably immoral. I don't know, but I'm also practical.
But it sounds in a way good.
Yeah, it's worked out.
In English to make it immoral cinema in a way.
Yeah,
it sounds quite good. But unfortunately, Guy, we're running out of time. But I wanted to ask you the final question. There is mentioned the year of 1977, the year when Roberto died. Which for Isabella was the end of a certain era of his. Yes. I was curious to know whether for you there was some kind of a year or landmark or person, maybe that person didn't pass away, but it came into your life, which you're having this additional kind of symbolic meaning of a new kind of era. Maybe, I don't know, you started to make your films. This is something that you associate with some kind of new life or.
No one's ever asked me this question in the 35 years I've been trying to make films, but it's a great question. And by a strange coincidence, and this is one of the reasons I get along with Isabella so well, we found out right away that our fathers died a week apart in 1977. And we each responded to our father's deaths differently, because I've talked to Isabella about it. But for me, I didn't grieve like I expected to. I loved my dad. And when he died, I was a bit shocked that I had to fake crying at his funeral. But what happened was I instead grieved on the installment plan, just a little bit every night. I received a visit from him in my dreams every night. He hadn't died, it turns out. He'd gone to live with a better family. And I had about 1 minute every night to convince my father that he should come back to his original family and stay with us. And I argued with my father for years after this, and almost every night. And I always failed to convince him to come back, but I could remember his voice perfectly in these dreams as I was forgetting his voice during my waking hours. And so even though I felt abandoned by him at the end of every one of these dreams, I also felt like I had just been with him just minutes before. And this strange bittersweet feeling became the source of my compulsion to make films. I wanted to capture this odd dreamlike feeling of pure love and abandonment in an experimental film somehow. Something like Lynch's Eraserhead, which conjures up all sorts of feelings of an unplanned pregnancy and the nightmarish upheaval of one's life after a baby is born. So it's for me, the death of my father as well. And he sort of set me out by dying on a path towards filmmaking. And I found out that the night before I found out my dad died, I found out that my girlfriend was pregnant with my daughter, who's now 43 years old. And she's the most important person in my life by far. And I put her in my movies whenever I could, starting with my very first movie when she was 5. And I don't know. So it's kind of a strange coincidence that a week away from Roberto Rossellini's death, my own father died, and that Isabella and I both sort of went in a certain direction towards meeting each other eventually. And the year 1977 will always, whenever I hear that year, it really pops in my head. So when I heard you just ask the question now, it really popped. And that those little sharp corners on the sevens and on the 2 7s really sort of cut into my brain like something a ninja would throw at me. And they really wake me up and make me think of all those years ago, which feel like they were 2 years ago and 100 years ago simultaneously.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I might understand the sense of it. It seems so very distant and close at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, is there anything else that I maybe didn't ask or you think that is very important to mention for the audience?
I think it's I might have covered it. I can't remember. It's been a while since I talked about the film, but I just think that this was made by Isabella when she was just discovering herself as a creative artist, as an auteur. You know, she'd been an actress before and a model and a muse and all sorts of things, but this was her first movie script. And I'm just totally impressed by its structure, its sense of how far out to go with the fantasy and still keep things honest, how controlled it is, how playful it is, and how self-assured and poised she is, how aware she is of who she is in the world and how recognizable or how not. I don't know. I just think it's a really remarkable achievement, and it's all there on the paper. And then of course she plays herself and everyone in the movie. It was the easiest movie I ever had to make, really. It's almost like I just had to point the camera. There were some effects and things to do, and I really worked hard on it because I didn't, like I said earlier, I didn't want to ruin it. But it was a real pleasure writing her or shooting her script, and so I think it's pretty impressive. I would say to viewers when you're watching the film, how would you make a tribute to someone you loved who is gone, and how that would differ from Isabella's approach. and how the heck did she arrive at this approach? But it's really singular and it's beautiful. And so I love the movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I've seen the film, I would say, like at least 5 or 6 times already.
Wow.
Also for doing the preparations for the festival,
Yeah.
but still, it's still very. It has a very, very warm heart.
It does.
Underneath everything, when there are monologues of Isabella in this kind of close-up setting, I think everything that she comments or adds to the imagery or the events that are taking place at the cinema, I think it's a theater screening hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this usually really strikes me. Everything that she says and how she says and her kind of time perception, how she articulates, structures herself. It's very, very provoking in many
Yeah,
senses.
I think that's so, like I said, if viewers are thinking about their own approach to making such a film, I don't know if Isabella has she definitely doesn't have a formal training in narrative structure or anything like that, but I think it just pays off to be psychologically honest about what you're saying and your approach to your subject matter. And it's almost like the structure just came naturally because she was being honest. Now, maybe there is some luck involved in that, because sometimes a movie will come out in one piece and you feel lucky, but other times, I don't know, it just came together for her. And then she just kept on making short films. Those screen porno films that are on YouTube are so charming. Those are about the sex lives of insects and things. She's hilarious in them. She was really kept getting her stride as a comedian and as a writer of things that obsessed her. You know, entomology, biology, the reproductive system. So it's the sex lives of insects, but really fascinating stuff. I don't know. She just developed out of this one movie that she created and had me shoot. She kind of created her own new brand now, you know, sort of Isabella Rossellini Industries or something like that, her post modeling thing. And she's handled her post modeling career astonishingly well. And now she's even been back on the runways with her daughter and son, and, you know, and I think even her grandson. Yeah, she's a going concern.
Yeah. But Guy, unfortunately, we have to say farewell to each other. I think, yeah.
Fair enough. It's fair enough. Thank you so much. It's been really lovely talking to you.